What's up, everybody? Welcome to Podcast Now. I'm Alex, and in this video, I want to go over my early impressions on the Silent Hill 2 remake. Sorry it took me so long, and sorry it's only an impressions video, but I want to do the game justice. I want to do you guys justice, and really go over my thoughts and, really convey, is this worth it? I know there was kind of people waiting on me, for this game, and I greatly appreciate that. So we'll talk about the first 6 hours, kind of general things in this video, and then I'll do a full-on review, hopefully, probably Saturday, I would say at the latest. I hope I can probably beat this game in the next couple days. So let me just start off by saying I really, really like this game. And I mean that is a blanket statement. I really think they've nailed it. Now, I haven't gone all the way through, but I can kind of see, like, even in the first 6 hours, you kind of can see the formula. The formula is starting to, once you're in the Brookhaven Hospital and, the apartments and all that stuff, you start to figure out, okay, well, what is the same as the original? And then where are they taking those liberties and what actually is enhanced and what is actually changed from Silent Hill 2 to this game, right? And that's kind of what I was trying to process in my head when playing it so I can make this video for you, right? Because there's kind of two parts to this. Number one is, well, how well does it do as a remake? Taking a beloved game and then doing it now. That's one part. Second part is it even just a good game in the first place, right? Because I kind of want to start there. Silent Hill 2 is specific. Silent Hill 2, I was thinking about this. I was talking to friends about this. I really don't know if you can put it in a box. And I actually think that's kind of special about it. It's a little weird. It's a little off. And I'm coming at this from somebody who, played the original a long time ago, but replayed Silent Hill 2 on the, enhanced mod on PC. I played it about a month ago, and I really liked it. I think it's not a perfect game. It's a game that can be improved upon in a lot of the mechanics and, combat, the camera work, right? But in terms of the storytelling and even, like, the acting, like how, I don't know, sometimes it just feels off. Like, there's something special about Silent Hill 2. You can compare it to Resident Evil. It's probably the best comparison you can make, but like when you see the cutscenes and you hear the acting and just some of the ways that the puzzles are conveyed to you and some of the ways the characters talk, and it's not a normal game. Like it's almost hard to replicate, and it's probably why there hasn't been too many great Silent Hill games, and you really can't ever pull this thing off a second time because it's just so kind of off just a little bit that it makes the whole thing good. So I do want to start there, right? Because you could say, well, Alex, I never played. I was 5 years old with the original Silent Hill 2, so I didn't play it when it first came out. But, you might have those people. Like, is this just a good game? I don't care about the remake. Is it a good game? I think it is. I think it combines a lot of these horror aspects that you've probably played in other games. I think the atmosphere of this game is phenomenal. In terms of the fog, I just want to focus on one specific thing really fast here. One thing that's been said quite often about Silent Hill 2 is they've never managed anybody who's done, collections or anything. Nobody's really been able to pull off the fog as well as the original since the original. I would say the enhanced mod does it the best, but you look at like the PS3 version, it's pathetic. It's very, very bad in terms of just how they do the lighting and some of the atmospheric things where the fog just isn't right. And the fog isn't right in many different emulators, all sorts of other things. They freaking nail it in this game, and it's one of the first things you see, right? Like you start off with the classic, the iconic opening, and within the first few seconds, you're walking and you get a cutscene, and then you're out, and it's just fog, and it's startling, it's scary, it's eerie. They nail it. They really nail the feel of as soon as you walk into the town, you can't see more than like 6 feet away from you, and you might see an enemy maybe 10 feet away from you, but you can only see parts of them, right? Somebody could sneak up on you because you're not paying attention. The sound design. I saw a couple of videos of some tech people that talked about just how good the sound in this game is. It's amazing. I mean, I would say from that technical side, whether it's the visuals, whether performance wise, I think is actually the only area this game falters a little bit. There's a little bit of like stuttering. I noticed some like frame rate issues in the first couple hours for me. It's not enough to hurt it in any way, but it's just something, it's not perfect. And no game really ever is perfect, but it's not perfect. But from the visuals, I think this game looks visually incredibly impressive, whether it's the enemies, you see a pyramid head, you see James, you see Maria, all these characters, they look really, really good. Like, it definitely looks 2024. The fog, like I said, and the sounds. I mean, some of these enemies are terrifying just because of the sound, not even just the threat that they pose to you, right? So I think in all of those ways, for the tech side, besides I guess maybe the performance, is elite. I would say it's really, really good. It's hard to go too much into the story because, well, number one, so much of it is a spoiler, and number two, like, I already know, right? I've played the original, so I know all the endings, I know where it's going. So in terms of, again, is it a good game from that perspective? I will say I think the acting is generally better now. There's something campy and original about the original where it can maybe never be duplicated, and that goes back to like which one is technically better, the original or this one. But I think in terms of like just, is it better acting? Is the voice work just better done? Yeah, it is. I think, some of the lines in the original just are not conveyed well. And I don't know, like, you can go back on the excuse of like, why does James fight like that? And it's because he's an average, everyday guy, right? Like, he's not a warrior. He's not a superpowered person. So like, that's why he fights. That's been, not necessarily an excuse, but a reason of why he fights like that in the original. That I think is enhanced here, and I think I can understand that. But when it comes to the voice work and just some of the way, again, things are conveyed, I will say it holds some of that charm, as I was saying earlier, like just things kind of being just a little bit off. There's a lot of moments of silence, when you look at a lot of these cutscenes, and, they're sporadic. The pacing is kind of all over the place, but I personally like the pacing. But, when it gets kind of right before the Brookhaven Hospital, and there's a lot of cutscenes, right? That's a big story kind of moment. There's a lot of moments where it's like people don't act like that. People don't talk like that generally in these games. And again, that goes back to it just kind of being a little bit weird where, James, like, he knows that it's odd that his wife died 3 years ago, but he got a letter, and, it's I don't know, it's like this contrasting thing where it's very serious and it's taking itself serious, and yet just some of the facial kind of things and some of the ways that he talks and just there's long periods of silence where he's like, I just don't get what's going on here. I like it. Like, it's weird. It's not normal. It's not something you get in, what do you want to say? Pick a classic like a Last of Us, right? You think of like the acting heavy type games, right? You don't get that cadence. I think that is honestly the word, the cadence or pacing, whatever you want to say, in terms of how they speak, like their speech patterns and the writing. That's not normal. It's not. And it does feel different. It does feel off. I think it feels off in a good way. I like this kind of thing. I don't know if I like it better, but I just like to have a game that is different every now and then, and this game does it. So if you're going for like a classically performed, written, structured game and these conversations between characters that, you get in the last 5-10 years that's really become, the norm, this really isn't that. Like, it definitely is more, the visuals are enhanced, they have added lines, absolutely, right? I think the acting is generally better, but like the cadence is still a little off, and I think purposely like that. It's actually kind of cool because you think of the original and you think like Bloober Team's not coming at it, the way they did when they were making it, but I think Bloober Team kind of understood that cadence and just being a little bit off. I really think they get that. And then, the rest of the game, puzzles, a lot of puzzles and a lot of fighting. And, again, in terms of the enhancements here, I think they did a really good job. I think the combat is good. I think the combat is challenging. I think it actually really does capture the original, and I think makes it 10 times better. That's the thing. The camera work and the fighting are just not good in the original. Like, again, they can have reasons. I think the camera work, they've said, was just technical things at the time. They were limited, right? And then the fighting was kind of like a reason why it was that way. I think they've kept the spirit of at least the combat. The camera work is just better. It's literally, the camera work is just how it should have been in the first place. But the combat itself, I think, is still that like wonky, like he's still very stiff. He's stiff as a board that he whacks, the enemies with. But it does it really well because you incorporate those dodging moments, and you can't just spam things. And he's not great with guns, so like the reticle will expand really big. And I've tried to get some headshots, and I have, but they are not easy to get, right? And oftentimes I'll miss, even if they're like directly in front of me, because the area of the bullet will like grow and shrink and stuff depending on what they're doing. So I think that that's where they really nail it, is they keep the energy that he's not a trained fighter, but they do make it like, okay, well, we literally cannot have that combat from 2001 again. We can't do it, right? And it's like, you're right, you can't. So you have to try to keep that spirit mixed in with like what people would maybe expect a little bit more now. So again, like, is it a perfect game? At least so far, it's not. Like, there are still things like, the cadence thing sometimes still gets me. I love the storytelling. I really do. I think the characters are very, very interesting. I think the tone and the atmosphere, they freaking nailed. The combat is so much better. The puzzles are, I would say, legitimately good. They take real thought. They are intricate. The one thing I will say is, in terms of maybe like the additions, they have made segments where you're just puzzle solving that were already long. They have made them longer, and I don't know if that's for the best. I think replaying the original game, like I said about a month ago, you realize it's huge portions of puzzle solving, right? And then you get some story moments and then more puzzle solving, and they put the combat every so often, like in between them and whatnot, or during them, and that's pretty much the cycle, right? They do that here. Like, the pacing is still generally the same. I think so far the extra stuff that they've added has been good. I haven't seen anything in terms of scenes or lines or anything like that. I haven't seen anything that was bad that I think has taken from it. In fact, I kind of think I know where they're going with like the new stuff they've added, and I really like it. So just in case you're curious, but the one thing I would say is probably the game's biggest flaw, might have always been and might still be now, is like, oh my God, I mean, like, really the apartments, right? And then the Brookhaven Hospital, like, I know they're long. I know that's a huge, like, and actually the hospital, especially towards the end of it, you're about halfway through the game. So I get that they're very long, and they're supposed to be long, and they're supposed to have a lot of these puzzles. They can just be enormously long. Like, I really don't know any other way of saying it. I feel like that pacing there, they do the best they can, because again, they throw enemies at you, they hide enemies, and they'll jump out and freaking scare the daylights out of me. So, they'll do that, but I still think there's actually a bit too much, and they added puzzles. So it's not like, not only are you finding 15 keys, that's probably an exaggeration. You might find 3 or 4 keys in the original game and then solve 3 or 4 puzzles. Well, now maybe not double it, but add a couple more, right? And now maybe the area is maybe you can actually go in a few more rooms than you could in the original. And I imagine that was to like pad the length, right? So it's not a 7-hour game, and now it's more like a 15-hour game. But some of the longer puzzle segments, instead of taking an hour and a half, now they're taking 2.5 or 3 hours. And it's like, yeah, it's a bit on the longer side. I actually wouldn't have minded if they trimmed that. So that would be, in my opinion, that's the big negative. A lot of the other maybe like nitpicks of like the cadence of things like that, I think that's more of just a decision of how the original decided to tell the story and have the characters act and stuff. I'm not going to flip out and, go after that kind of stuff, at least not right now. We'll see if anything kind of changes as it goes. So yeah, there's my early impressions. I think this game is a really, really good game. I think it's a good game in its own right, and I think in terms of what it does as a remake is really good as well. So want to beat it. I have roughly half the game left right now, so want to see what else they not necessarily change, I guess maybe add and kind of interject into the story, and then I'll do my full review a few days from now. Okay, let me know what you guys think in the comments. Make sure, as always, you're subscribed to the channel, bell icon turned on, and I hope to see you all on the next one.